Okay, this is going to be a video on the unit circle with degrees first that are bigger than 360 or negative, and then we're going to go into radians when it's bigger than 2 pi or negative pi. Okay, so what you have to do here, what you want to have is you want to have your unit circle. You want to have the axes that we've drawn. You want to be able to do that by hand. Okay, but then I'm going to be accessing that out, so I'll be referencing that. So what you want to do, okay, if the degree is either 0 or below, bigger than 360 or negative, is you want to find a coterminal angle. And we talked about that. You would want to subtract 360, so that's secant of 120, which that's going to put me in quad 2. Okay, now how do I find my reference angle? I would subtract from 180, so my reference angle is going to be 60 degrees. So 180 minus 120 would be 60, okay? So what I want to do in the 60-degree triangle, okay, all right, I've got 2, all right, I've got square root of 3 and 1, okay? I'm finding secant, so that's h over a, okay? So secant is h over a, or 2 over 1, which would be 2. Now, since I'm in quad 2, the only things that are positive in quad 2 are sine and cosecant, so this would be negative 2 for an answer. Okay, all right? So on this one, what I would do is subtract 360. Okay, that's going to be 225 degrees, which would be in quad 3. I would want to compare that with 180, so that's going to be a 45-degree reference angle. Okay, so 45 degrees is this. Okay, secant is h over o. Okay, all right, so that's going to be 2 over the square root of 2, which is going to turn into square root of 2, okay, if you rationalize that. And since I'm in quad 3, the only things positive are tan and cotan, so that would be negative, okay? Now, if your amount happens to be less than that, I'm going to add 360. So that's going to put me at 300 degrees, which is in quad 4. What I would want to compare to quad 4 is 360, so my reference angle is 60 degrees. So I got that same 60-degree triangle there, okay? Square root of 3, all right, 1 and 2, okay? This is A, this is O. Cotangent is A over O, so that's 1 over the square root of 3, which would turn into square root of 3 over 3. Now, since I'm in quad 4, the only things positive are cosine and secant, so that's going to be negative square root of 3 over 3, okay? All right, this one I want to add 360, okay? So that's going to be 30 degrees, which is, that's going to put me in quadrant 1. What's convenient is the reference angle just is the reference angle, okay? So at 30 degrees, I got square root of 3, 1 and 2, okay? Sine is O over H, okay? So sine is O over H, so that's 1 over 2, and since it's in quad 1, it's going to be positive, okay? This one I would subtract 360. That would put me at cosine of 180 degrees. Now, this is an axis point. So at cosine of 180, okay, that's negative 1, 0, C and S. Well, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for cosine, so it's going to be negative 1. All right, tangent of negative 270. I want to add 360. That makes it tangent of 90, okay? So that's on this thing right here. That's 0, 1, okay, C and S, okay? Now, what I'm going to have to do with this, all right, since it's tangent, those don't tell me tangent, so I got to rewrite that as sine over cosine. Sine amount is 1, 1 over 0 would be undefined. Okay. Secant of 720, I'd subtract 360. I get secant of 360 degrees, okay, which is right here. All right. Okay. C and S, that's 1 and 0. Okay. All right. Now, secant, all right, is not one of those, but I should write that as cosine. That's 1 over cosine, so 1 over 1, which gives me 1. Okay, so the same things we've done with our axis points. Okay, you can go ahead and pause your video. Okay, at this point, there's some practice ones that you can do, that you can see in the notes if you go into Canvas. There's some practice problems. You can practice those. Okay, all right. Moving on to the radians, okay? The way you check to see, okay, it's not an issue with the negatives, that's pretty obvious, is how many times would 3 go into 8? If it's 2 plus, you're going to have to subtract 2 pi. So I got 8/3 minus 2, so I want a common denominator. So that's 8/3 minus 6/3. So I got tangent of 2/3 pi. Okay? 2/3 would be in quadrant 2. It's very convenient. My reference angle is the pi over 3 triangle. Okay? All right? So the pi over 3 triangle for me is 2 square root of 3 and 1. Tangent is O over A. Okay? So that's square root of 3 over 1, which is square root of 3. Since it's in quadrant 2, the only thing positive there is sine and cosecant, so that's going to be negative. Okay, all right. The negative ones, I'm going to have to add 2 pi. So that's going to be negative 6 over 4 plus 8 over 4 would be 5 over 4. Okay, all right. So that's going to be quad 3, 5 over 4. Okay, the reference angle, okay, is the over 4 triangle. Remember the radians, it's much easier. Okay, all right. Since I'm dealing with, sorry, that's not right. Since I'm dealing with sine, that's h and o, okay? So O over h, square root of 2 over 2. Since I'm in quad 3, the only things positive there are tan and cotan, okay? How many times does 16 go into 17? At least 2, so I got to subtract. 2 over 1. So that's going to be 17 over 6 minus 12 over 6. That's 5/6 pi. That's quadrant number 2. Okay, the over 6 triangle. Okay, square root of 3, 1, and 2. All right, cosecant is h over o. Okay, so I got 2 over 1, which is equal to 2. Since I'm in quad 2, that's going to remain positive. Okay, all right. All right, so now we're going on to this one. That's a negative 5/3. So I would want to add 2 over 1. So it's negative 5/3 plus 6/3 is 1/3 pi. Okay, all right. So cosine is a over h. Okay, all right. So my triangle, it's that same one here. That's 1, 2, square root of 3, h over or a over h. So 1 over 2. Okay, all right. This is in quadrant number 1. Okay, so that's everything's gonna be positive there, which would be 1/2. 4 into 15 would be actually 3, so I'm gonna have to subtract that. 15 over 4 minus 2 over 1. Okay, so that's 15 over 4. I would have to multiply by 4 over 4 would be 8 over 4. Okay, give me 7 over 4, which that's gonna be quadrant number 4. Okay, the over 4 triangle. Okay, that is the 2, square root of 2, square root of 2. Okay, all right, cotangent, this is A, this is O, is A over O. So square root of 2 over square root of 2, which would be 1. Since I'm in quad 4, the only thing positive is cosine and secant. So that's why that one is negative. Okay, now this one obviously is not one of the triangles, it's an axis point. So if I subtract 2 pi here, that's 3 pi. That's still too big, so I gotta subtract 2 more pi. So what I'm dealing with is cosine of 1 pi. All right, so that's gonna be right here. Okay, that's negative 1, 0, CNS. Okay, now with cotangent, that's not one of those, so I have to rewrite cotangent. It's cosine over sine. Okay, so it's negative 1 over 0, which would be undefined. Okay, 7 over 2. 2 goes into 7 3 times. So I'm going to have to subtract 2 over 1. So that's going to be 7 over 2 minus 4 over 2, which would be 3 over 2 pi. Okay, that's an axis point right here. That's 0, negative 1, CNS. Okay, it's very convenient because I'm trying to find sine, so it's just automatically negative 1. Okay, and then this one, I'm going to have to add 2 pi. So that's negative 3 over 2 plus 4 over 2 is 1 over 2 pi. Okay, so that's going to be here. That's a 0, 1, CNS. All right, for cosine and sine. All right, now it's not convenient because I have to have secant. Now secant would be 1 over cosine, so 1 over 0, which is undefined. Okay, all right, and that's how you do the ones. Okay, if the degrees are too big, subtract 360. If they're negative, add 360. If the radians are too big, the way you check that they're too big, does it go in more than twice? Because 2 pi would be too much. Subtract 2 pi. The negative ones are pretty obvious. Add 2 pi, okay? That's basically how you do the radians and degrees. It's a good review for the whole unit.